In the meantime, Jabot and Ct Sharifa had arrived at an inn not too far from the harbor. Jabot pushed weary Ct Sharifa to enter, as he was planning to wait for Jamil there. As luck would have it, who did he see inside other than Juragan, the ship captain, who was having dinner with his crew. Juragan jumped to his feet when he saw Jabot walk in with unsteady Ct Sharifa, who was trembling and looking ashen. Aha! If it is not my friend's wife, Ct Sharifa! Juragan shouted and walked toward them. Seeing immediately that Ct Sharifa was not herself, he said, "Now, what happened to my friend? What happened to you? What is he doing to you?" he inquired threateningly.
Jabot pulled out his kris and shouted, "Move back! I will kill you all, and I will kill her too." What happened next was hard to describe. With a blood-curdling shout, Juragan moved with such speed that seemed like a blur, and Jabot flew into the air. Jabot landed on the floor with a horrible crash. And as he tried to get up, Juragan growled, "Where is my friend Tun Utama? You better tell me now or I'll tear your limbs apart." Slowly and painfully, Jabot got up. But suddenly he dashed for the door, and before anyone could do anything, they could hear him galloping away on his horse, into the darkness of the night. Juragan then tried to find out just what had happened. It took Ct Sharifa a while to regain her composure, and between her sobs she told Juragan the whole thing. Juragan asked the innkeeper to take good care of Ct Sharifa, and then he and his crew set out to go after Jabot and to find Tun Utama. Filled with terror, Jabot forced his horse to run as fast as it could. He went back to the direction where he left Jamil and Tun Utama, without realizing that his horse was so exhausted it was foaming at the mouth and sweating blood. Tun Utama was slowly following the tracks on the ground, when he heard a distant sound of a running horse coming toward his direction. He quickly hid behind the trees and waited to see who it could be. Imagine his surprise to see that it was Jabot, who was running as if being chased by a monster. But where was Ct Sharifa? Not knowing what was going on, Tun Utama immediately gave chase. "Hey, where is my wife?" he shouted. But Jabot just kept on moving. Tun Utama did not have any choice but to go after him, with such fury that he bit his lips so hard it bled. After a while, Tun Utama was able to close the distance. Suddenly, without warning, Jabot's horse fell head-first to the ground, and Jabot was thrown high into the air. Apparently the horse was pushed beyond its limit, and it died instantly. Jabot hit the ground with such force, the impact made him roll for several yards, and he found himself hanging over a steep cliff. He clawed into the grass on the edge of the cliff. "Help!" he cried desperately. Tun Utama jumped to the ground and tried to grab Jabot's hand. But it was slippery and he could feel it slipping off slowly. Jabot cried as he slid down and finally swallowed by the deep and dark ravine. Tun Utama cried too, "Where is my wife?" But his cry just dissipated unanswered into the seemingly uncaring forest. Afterward, everything was quiet as if nothing ever happened in the forest. Tun Utama slowly stood up, and looking into the sky, he let out a loud and desperate cry from the top of his lungs. Then Tun Utama got on his horse and slowly tried to trace Jabot's tracks back to where he came from. He was exhausted and his progress was slow. The moonlight did not seem to provide enough light for him to see the tracks clearly on the ground. Finally, he could not take it any more, and he slid off the saddle and fell to the ground. His horse stood by where he was lying, and that was where Juragan and his crew found him later in the wee hours of the morning.